Hello, thanks for joining me on Life and Surround. Today we are going to be examining, discussing, reviewing All Things Must Pass by George Harrison and this 50th anniversary deluxe set, really curated by the George Harrison estate. So his wife and son lovingly involved. And this is cool. This is expensive. So you get this box style. It's going to say clamshell, but I mean the lid just comes off. We recreate the cover. On the front, there's some gold writing on both sides. And then on the back, you get the disc contents. Now let's go ahead and open it up. Inside, we get this little pull ribbon, and that helps us to dislodge a very nice book. A very nice book. Again, we're recreating the cover on the front there. And the book has song by song, which is great. It's got some quotes, it's got anecdotes from people involved, it's got facsimiles of lyric sheets, it's got photos from the sessions and from the, just daily life at the time. It's got images of master tapes. My favorite. My favorite. Love the smell of deluxe set books in the morning. I think this is probably George and Danny at the mixing console. So very special times. We can see why Danny loves his father's music so much. Very, very cool. Oh, and here's Danny hanging out on a hike through a forest with Paul Hicks, who is the remixing engineer on this project. And forgive me, I'm not a great George Harrison historian, but I think Paul Hicks was an engineer on the original recording as well. Don't quote me on that unless I'm right. And also bear in mind a really cool picture of George. Maybe in the middle of one of his estates. But very nice pastoral shot. Anyway, alright. These gnomes. Oh my gosh. These garden gnomes. It's been theorized that George is surrounded by garden gnomes on the cover to sort of represent his time in the Beatles. The gnomes are the Beatles? I don't know. I don't know about that. And then, under the book, we have this poster printed on flat matte paper, and it's like really dark, and it's kind of, I don't know, murky. It's not the greatest way to represent that image, but it's George in his hat sitting in front of a nice window. Alright, and then we get the discs and the CDs, which have the original double album plus the Jams EP, let's call it, the Apple Jams, on discs 1 and 2, and the CDs all get a garden gnome. Alright, different color sleeve with a different garden gnome posing on each one. So, and then CDs 3 through 5 are outtakes. Alright, so CDs 3 and 4 are demos from the first and second day that George was just showing the songs to Phil Spector. And then CD 5 is outtakes and other sorts of rarities. And they're a really good listen. And since this set is hard to find for less than $100, I recommend enjoying every second of it to just bring the overall dollar per moment enjoyed ratio down in our favor. And then the 6th disc is the Blu-ray which will get the majority of the remainder of our attention. This Blu-ray contains the album, the original double album, and the Apple Jams in high-resolution stereo, in not as high-resolution stereo, in super high-resolution DTS HD master. I believe it might be the first time I've seen 192/24 DTS. Maybe on some classical stuff, but for like a pop rock venture, I think this is a first. And then 48/24 Atmos, which is typical for Atmos. Maybe it can go higher than that now, but I don't believe so. But I also say at least one untrue thing per video, so that may have been it. Alright, so yes, we have this box. It's 7-inch profile, I believe, and I prefer that to bigger boxes and kind of go with my 7-inch SACDs, Santana and Jeff Beck and all that. What is there to say? So, I would not have checked out this set were it not for the new 5.1 and Atmos mixes. This is Life in Surround, and I'm a surround junkie, as are many of you. We know this. So, is this set worth it from a surround perspective? This is interesting. Let's look at the stereo 5.1 and Atmos mixes and masterings. Let's start with the stereo. We can see that it is fairly heavily limited, and this is the 192/24 version. So it's super duper high resolution, but also fairly heavily limited. No clipping so far as I can hear, but not very dynamic. Now let's go look at the dedicated 5.1 DTS HD Master mix, and we'll see that it is more dynamic in particularly the front channels, and then obviously some of the material has been situated in the center and the surrounds, and so that takes pressure off the front channels as well. Plenty of peaks have been brought up to 0 here, but certainly not as heavily as was done in the stereo mix. And now let's go take a look at the Atmos mix and master. And Audacity can only unpack the 7.1 ground mix, so we're not seeing what happens with the heights here. But we can already tell that the front channels are way more dynamic than either the 5.1 and especially more than the stereo. Also, the surround channels, which are the ones on the bottom, have much more dynamic range compared to the fronts than in the 5.1 mix, and then some of the information is also relegated to the surround backs. So we definitely have the highest degree of surround separation here. We have the largest range of dynamics. And so, this brings me to what I feel is the most interesting point to be made about the surround / immersive content to be found in this set. That even if you have a surround system that tops out at 5.1, people are consistently saying that they enjoy playing the Atmos version much more than the dedicated DTS 5.1. And I think we have discovered why. Atmos can natively present itself on a 5.1 array, or on a 7.1 array, or on a 7.1.2 array, or on a 7.1.4 array. But the point is, it can play back in 5.1. And so it would seem to make the most sense to play the dedicated 5.1 mix, because the intent is to natively work best in 5.1. But since Atmos can perform in 5.1, and it has more dynamics in this case, and a better balance between fronts and surrounds, I think that is why people are enjoying the Atmos stream the most. And I've even heard it said, I believe Paul Hicks did some work on the previous Lennon sets, the recent Lennon sets, and people are likewise saying that the better experience is to play the Atmos, even if your system tops out at 5.1, as opposed to the dedicated 5.1 stream. So why Mr. Hicks is mixing and the production company is mastering the Atmos with more separation and dynamics, I just don't know. I'm just reporting the news. Don't shoot the messenger. But definitely pick up this set if you appreciate this album, which this is my exposure to the vast majority of these songs. And I have to say, I'm very, very impressed. I wish that somebody had told me that this album originated as a double album, I believe 9 songs apiece, so 18 tracks total, and then the final several tracks, Out of the Blue, It's Johnny's Birthday, Plug Me In, I Remember Jeep, and Thanks for the Pepperoni, are known as the Apple Jams, and came on a 3rd LP in the original set. And so as I was listening to this Blu-ray for the first time ever, I really felt in my heart of hearts that Hear Me Lord was like the perfect ending to a pretty darn good double album. And then Out of the Blue came on, and I just began to lose interest, and I was just completely over the experience by the time Thanks for the Pepperoni was done. They're not bad jams. I would just prefer to actually put this on and just listen to those 5 jams in their own separate context. And so in terms of the original album itself, like most double albums, I think it certainly would have been a stronger single album, and even as a double album, there are a couple of tracks that I feel just aren't quite as strong as the surrounding content, and maybe could have done better as B-sides, or, you know, just bonus content. I Dig Love just has kind of a lyric that doesn't engage me. It does have a really cool musical hook, and in Atmos, the tom-toms are just like this big. Each tom-tom is like 4.5 feet wide. It's just insane. So I definitely have appreciated the musical experience. I just feel like it's not among the stronger tracks. And then maybe the album could have done with one version of Isn't It a Pity. But still, it's a very, very good song. I love Ballad of Sir Frankie Crisp. The way they bring in that like really low voice is really well done in Atmos for one thing, and just it's a lot of fun. Of course, there's My Sweet Lord. What Is Life kind of sounds to me like a Bebop Deluxe track, in a good way. We have some Bob Dylan collaboration here, Eric Clapton, oh shoot, Bobby Whitlock. Man, just actually looking at the cast of players, I mean, this is just an incredible record. Ringo Starr, Jim Gordon, Alan White, who would go on to play with Yes, Klaus Voormann, Carl Radel. I think we have some crossover here with Derek and the Dominoes, of course. Gary Wright, Bobby Whitlock, Billy Preston, Gary Brooker, Pete Drake, George, of course, Eric Clapton, Dave Mason, Bobby Keys, Jim Price, Badfinger. Oh my goodness. Mal Evans, George O'Hara Smith Singers, orchestral arrangements by John Barham. Oh, and then we have recording engineers Ken Scott, Philip McDonald. Produced, of course, by Phil Spector. And so then, yeah, I guess I'm searching for a way now to wrap up, and so maybe we should talk about the de-spectorization of these new mixes. One thing that I am glad that I did is I went on my new streaming service, Apple Music, and I played the original mix of this album, and to just kind of wrap my mind and feast my ears on the original wall of sound, you know, Phil Spector implementation of this record. And yeah, I think I agree with what others have said, that that showcases this album as more of a pop album. And when you take away a bunch of that drenching reverb and you give more separation to parts, it now feels more organic, and perhaps it connects more strongly to the pastoral nature of the artwork and some of the themes, and yeah, just some of the feeling and the sentiment of the album. So it has been despecterized to a significant degree. Some of that was baked into the multi-tracks, and so yeah, this is a cool experience. What a remarkable album. I have not heard all of the Beatles solo works, but of those I have, including Ram, some of the Wings material, and Imagine, and like John Lennon's hits in Atmos, I would have to say that so far this is my favorite. This is the strongest to me that I've heard so far. I believe this is George Harrison's third solo effort and the first after the disbanding of the Beatles. And I will be returning to this Atmos version of this album, All Things Must Pass. I would say I'll offer some criticism. One disappointment for me when I discovered that the title track, All Things Must Pass, I figured it was going to be this grand metaphor for life and death, or maybe the impermanence of man's achievements, something along those lines. And to find out it's really a song about just leaving somebody. I don't know. I just found that to be, I don't know, anticlimactic maybe. But that said, there's plenty of wonderful, emotional, spiritual, intellectual, metaphysical content, and some fun to be had as well. Remarkable musicianship, especially the weepy kind of teardrop guitar playing. Is that Clapton? Is that Harrison? I'm not sure, but there's just this weepy quality, this dripping tone and kind of like way of bending and sliding notes that is just distinctive to and all over this record. And I just find it absolutely enthralling. So definitely pick this up if you can stomach the cost. You can stream this in Atmos on Tidal and on Apple Music and maybe other services. I can tell you that I compared the Blu-ray Atmos to the streaming Atmos and was very, very much underwhelmed by the streaming version. I have heard streaming Atmos albums that do it for me, and it could be that I just didn't have the opportunity to compare to Blu-ray in those cases, like Pearl Jam's last record, Halsey's last record. The Weeknd has an album out in Atmos, and I've covered those in previous videos. And it could be that if I got a Halsey Manic Blu-ray with Atmos in its full bandwidth, that I would compare it to the streaming version and be underwhelmed again. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that streaming Atmos can be entertaining, it can be enjoyable, but at least in this case, maybe because of the way this album was recorded and the nature of the material, the sonics that are involved here, the Blu-ray Atmos just absolutely wipes the floor with the streaming version. So that's the news, my friends and my loved ones. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Don't forget, thumbs up, leave comments of whatever you would like to say, and share the video, subscribe, ring the notification bell if you haven't already. It all helps this channel get the love of surround and immersive music out to more people, to be enjoyed and to be consumed, and to pump health into the music industry that gives us so much joy and pleasure. And so I appreciate you, and until next time, live life in surround.